Your voice matters. Your vote matters. And your story matters. This is Erika Sugarmon, Unfiltered. Let's get into it. Hi, I'm Erika Sugarmon, and welcome to Erika Sugarmon Unfiltered. Today is the gift of resilience. As we reflect on our season, it is today, December the 23rd, 2 days before Christmas. And have you been naughty or nice? We have a special guest, and she is a woman of stature. She's a woman of resilience, and she is the one and only Shaniqua Watson. And she is going to tell us about her journey and how she became the woman she is today. Shaniqua Watson, I love your hair.
Thank
It is gorgeous.
thank you.
It reflects your personality.
Thank you.
You are the definition of Memphis resilience. You went from the choosing between a bologna sandwich and gas and teaching others how to secure their own home. You have really, since I've known you a short period of time, you've inspired me in so many ways. But today, I want you to tell our listening audience, our viewers, how they can also get paid to read. Shaniqua Watson, please tell us your story.
Well, I guess I'm trying to figure which way to just to even start. So
Okay.
I guess I will just kind of start from I just say
The beginning.
yeah, right. So from the beginning, I always tell people this part. My parents, probably like some people parents, they were having their own issues in life because my parents were 19 and 20 years old when they had me. And so my grandparents actually got custody of me a few days before I turned 2 years old. And one thing about when you go through custody and going through the system, I always say grandparents have the option to say no. So when we think about the world and think about children going into the foster care system, all those different things, I'm always just so grateful that they even said, you know what, we don't want our grandchild to go in this system
Mm-hmm.
and let's help her. And so they actually did it. Like my granddaddy was already older and he was like maybe about 7 years away from retire before they like when they decided to say, hey, we're gonna get custody of her, and their kids were grown. How they're welcoming a child that's about to be two. Like they were empty
Wow.
nesters. So I would just say it definitely just kind of really started from there. I was just grateful to have a grandmother that was an educator. So she was working for them Memphis City Schools as a first grade teacher. And so
Mm-hmm.
like life was like just really, really great. I played the piano. I was a Girl Scout. Oh, I did
Wow.
ballet. I did everything, right? I was in church, organized my first play in my church. Well, my granddaddy also used to drive the bus for the church. So,
Mm-hmm.
and my grandmother was a part of Missionary Society. So it was like very, very involved as a child. My granddad was a part of the union here. Like I was a little girl at like union meetings, city council
Oh,
meetings,
wow.
like with my granddad because he worked for the city of Memphis. So I think it was just one of those like, hey, but then as I got older, when they say kids want to be grown, when I was a teenager, well, I was a preteen, I decided that I wanted to go stay with my mom in South Memphis because my
Mhm.
grandparents were really serious about when the lights come on, you come in the house. And with my mom
Right.
being young,
I remember that.
with my mom being younger, I had younger siblings. I'm like, I want to live on with my siblings, have fun. Like, my mom was a little bit more lenient. And so I went to South Memphis and it was just like a whole different world. And when I say a whole different world, it was a whole different world because I went from actually having my own bedroom to sharing my room with my sisters. And then I had a
Mm.
little brother and I had a stepbrother. But I will say this, the great thing about staying in South Memphis was that my first job came from actually the Boys and Girls Club that was in South Memphis. And I'm always heartbroken when I drive down Richmond and there's nothing there, right? It's just an empty field. But that was where my first paycheck came from. So I would go to the Boys and Girls Club and, most people will play, basketball, play dominoes, play spades. I would go to the computer lab. That's what I would do. When we had the option to, go to camp, I was like, okay. And so one of the counselors there, she said, do you want to get paid? And I was like, yeah. So I went to camp camp down at Camp Phoenix, which is in Sardis, Mississippi. When I got back home, I got a check for $30 and I'm 14. I'm the richest person in the neighborhood. The candy lady got all my money.
I remember the candy lady.
My mom did take me to, go cash my check. And I'm like, I'm so rich. But that one time getting your first paycheck, I think that's where it
Mhm.
really shaped my life when it came to just kind of saying, like, I can make my own money. Now I'm just like, I've been working for 2 decades. Because I actually had my first paycheck when I was 14. Obviously, we stayed in South Memphis, and actually my behavior was off the chain. My mom did make a very conscious decision, and she moved to Whitehaven. And when I got
Right.
to Hillcrest High School, I actually hated Hillcrest High School in the beginning because at that time I was transferring from Hamilton High to Hillcrest High. And I was like, I'm going to hate it here. But I actually ended up like saying that going to Hillcrest High was like one of the best things that happened in my life because they offered us the opportunity to be a part of Upward Bound, Delta Gems, and I was able to be a part of the leadership team and the Honor Society. And it was just so many opportunities that I received just from leaving South Memphis going to Whitehaven. She was over the Honor Society leadership team. I actually got to be like a nominee with the Congressional Youth something in Nashville, but like I had
Wow.
teachers that like really, really pushed me. I like still talk to my keyboarding teacher. I still talk to the librarian to this day. I actually saw my counselor. Like she still works for the school district and she was my biology teacher before she became my counselor. So just like seeing like these people who just like kind of helped my life, it's been just a real different journey with life for me. But I will say, while I'm definitely making this seem just like, okay, we've had ups and downs. I've had a lot of interesting things that have just happened over the course of time. But because I do
Well,
recall the day before I graduated high school. So I graduated May 17th, 2009. May 16th, 2009 was our eviction date with my mom.
oh wow.
So actually, my cousins, which is her nephew and his wife at the time, they're the ones who took me to my high school graduation.
Oh wow.
And so, of course, like my mom was there, my grandparents
Mhm.
were there, my cousins, they were there. But that's how I got to graduation. And so, luckily, I was able to get a full academic scholarship, like to go through the state of Tennessee, anywhere through the state of Tennessee. And I'm like, yes, these grades paid off. I just felt like had I not like had that foundation from like my grandparents or even my mom realized like we got to pull her out of Hamilton, I don't even think I would have even really ended up in college because I was already like headed down the wrong path. Like I had a great foundation, but sometimes when you think about environment in neighborhoods, you can get
Mhm.
accustomed to that. And
Right.
especially when you're you're a part of a neighborhood, but especially I left from White Station Middle and going
Right.
to Hamilton Middle when I went
Mhm.
to South Memphis. And they used to always say, you read like you're white. And my grandmother she used to be so mad at me. I was like, how do I read like I'm black? I thought it was a difference. And she was like, it was no such thing. But just like I said,
Right.
as life kind of went on, it's one thing when you're a child, but when adulting starts adulting, it really just starts adulting. I've experienced some things just kind of going through college, being broke. The level of being broke. I remember it was a time where I had to decide if I wanted to eat or get gas for my car. This is where those survival skills actually they came into play. So I overdrafted my account, ran credit on my debit card, and I got me some bread, some Kool-Aid, and some bologna. Luckily, I already had sugar at my apartment, and I believe that was like my junior year of college when I transferred back home. So
Mhm.
that was like a journey. Luckily, I was able to graduate from University of Memphis in 2013. Life started taking a turn like as soon as I graduated. I graduated May 12th, 2013. My grandmother passed away November 10th, 2013. Like my grandma was my cheerleader. She like, you going to college. It wasn't you gonna go somewhere. When she passed away, I just felt like my world was just turning upside down. So when it came to like my grandparents, they didn't miss anything. Even when we staying over there with my mom, like birthday, Christmas, everything that I was doing, my grandparents were there. I was in the hospital one time sick and they went over to University of Memphis and got my National Black Scholarship $100 award because I was in the hospital. Going to the ceremony, we're going to stay and we're going to get it. And they did. So when
Mm.
she passed away, my grandfather and I were the ones who found her on the kitchen floor. I was the one who had
Oh,
to perform CPR, trying to bring her back. I was the one who called the ambulance. My granddad was shaking so bad that he couldn't even dial 911. Of course, they came. They were trying to, as I say, bring her back. Unfortunately, she didn't come back. And my granddad was sitting in the kitchen. He was like, no, she's coming back. Like her leg is moving. And I'm like, no, Papa, like she's gone. That moment, I saw life just flash me on my eyes. I was the only person who knew where all of her life insurance paperwork was. My granddad didn't even know. And then kind of like also like during that time, I also had became homeless. So I'm going through homeless like for the second time now. Like I actually planned my grandmother's funeral from the hotel room.
so when you say you're homeless for the second time, what that look like?
Well, like the first time with high school, I didn't really have anywhere to go. So I was like staying with my cousins for a second. And then I stayed with one of my friends. And right before it was time for
Um,
me to go to college, I just went over there with my grandparents. But when I
okay.
experienced homelessness right around the time my grandmother died, it was nowhere to go. And I was in grad school, by the way. I like the nerve. I still wanted to be in school, but I was in grad school. I actually stayed. I only had like enough money to stay like at your Starlight Inn, which is on 3rd Street. I could
Mm,
stay at your Super 8 Motel, which is next to like Classic Souls. Clarence Inn used to be on Brooks. That was one of my
mm,
homes. I stayed at the Super 8 on Lamar. These
wow.
were the hotels that I stayed in when I could not afford to stay in the hotels. Like I would just like drive around the city like all day, all night. I don't have enough for this, but I can try to use this for the gas and I'll just drive around. I had totes in my truck. It's kind of how it
Wow.
was. And as crazy as this may sound, when I stayed at the Starlight Inn, I was so happy that they actually gave us a brown paper sack lunch when we checked in, and it had Oreos, it had a bag of Lay's chips, and it had an orange. Staying in those motel rooms, like I really wouldn't go to sleep until the sun came up. It is behavior, criminal behavior
Mhm.
that may happen there. And I always tell people like, I remember it was a guy saying, hey, and I was like, I'm not a good candidate. Now look, I'm homeless, don't have anywhere to go, but I'm not a good candidate to be a prostitute. Like, leave me alone.
So let me ask you this, all this going on in your life, okay, how are you able to focus on your studies? You're in survival mode. The average person would have broken down by now. So how are we able to focus?
I remember my grandmother used to be like, you never get too old to learn. And I just realized, like, and I guess it came just from growing up in the church. I'm like, no. I remember saying a prayer when I was going through. I'm like, God, if you get me through this one, I'll do whatever you need me to do. That's kind of just what helped me. Like, I wouldn't even sleep. I really probably slept like maybe 2 hours a day, right between the time the sun came up and was kind of ready for me to go to work. Because during that time, I worked in mental health as a case manager, helping other people
Mhm.
while I was homeless and still going to
Wow.
school. And I'm just like, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going because I knew that wasn't going to be the end for me. I realized there was a temporary situation. I'm going to get through this. It was like really determination. I'm like, I've seen school be the reason that I have already like made it to different parts of my life at that point. And I'm like, that's the only option like I have. It's either that or I would be one of the women who would qualify as a candidate as the prostitute. So
Mhm.
I just was like, no, I got to keep going with my education because for me,
Wow.
education was the only thing that was going to help me. It was going to pave my way for like the success that I was like I desired. Staying in South Memphis, I mean, I've stayed, we've had roaches in the house. The lights have been off. So when you have stayed, I've slept on the floor. I've had to be the one to pay my mama car note. I've been there, right? And I'm just like, you
Right.
know what? If I got through that, I can get through this. And every time I am always in school when I hit these hard times. So it was just like, it was like
Oh,
my brain gonna keep focused. You focus on that degree You gonna make it. Kinda just brought me on in. So yeah, I actually buried my grandma while I was working on my master's in homeless, and then
Mm,
buried went to New York, had to bury my uncle in New York. He didn't have any wife, any children. He
wow.
died 13 months after my grandma. And
Mhm.
so I had to go to New York and bury him.
So it sounds like even the background of your family, even though you had very little to give. That's what it sounds like.
Mhm.
As you're going through this process, as far as focusing on school and going through being unhoused and helping your family, all this resilience. Since I've known you, you're still so compassionate. You're still helping others. And even though you had humble beginnings, you were still helping others. Some people get bitter, they'll get tired, they'll feel like, why me? Why me? But you are very resilient, but you're so happy and content and strong. So, where does that inner strength come from? Does it come from the things you've gone through in life? Does it come through your faith? Does it come through your family? Where do you draw from the strength that you have?
I think it just comes from maybe a combination of everything. Knowing the background, like how, like I said, my grandparents took me in. I think
Right.
that has like set the foundation, knowing that I've been in places and situations, and I tell people, I'm like, I don't even know why I'm even here on this earth, because it's so many situations that I've been through that I don't even think I've ever spoken on. And then I guess from being like the older sister, like I have two sisters and one brother. I recall them going to school and our lights got cut off, and I was the only one that had some money because I was working. So my mama took me to MLG&W to pay the bill, and they never knew the lights was off. Sometimes it's like you may be born in a situation and your story has already been designed for you. I just feel like when you
Mm,
come in this world, everything is a test. I used to say all the time, I
mm,
was like, you know what? I'm going through this test. Either it wasn't letter grades, right? Either I'm going to pass or I'm going to fail. I know with my mom, she's like, hey, if you fall down, you got to get back up. So I think that's just
mm.
really kind of just like where it is. It's like you come out swinging, like
Yeah.
you give it your all. And my grandmother, she was like that. My granddad was like that. And so I'm just like, all right. And I think that's just kind of where it came from. And I'm just like, okay. And do I get tired? Absolutely. But I
Yeah.
also look at it like this. With my mom having four children, I was like, it
Right.
was resources that I wish she would have had. Resources, even with my grandparents, like I said, my grandma worked for MSC, well, for Memphis City Schools, and my granddad worked for City of Memphis, but it was resources they could have had.
Mm.
So that they didn't know about because, in the perfect world, people like, oh, they're middle class, they don't need it. Their insurance, I'm an asthmatic. Like, I almost died when I was in the fourth grade from an asthma attack. And I was
Mm.
in ICU for about a week.
Wow.
And they didn't learn about allergy and asthma care until after I was in ICU, and they would take me to doctor appointments all the time. Don't you
Mm.
think like they would have saved their money and time if only thing I needed to go was the allergy and asthma instead of constantly having to, have them pay doctor bills, all these high premiums, if they just could have referred me to a specialist. Until I almost died, they referred me to a specialist, and both of my grandparents had insurance. So when I look at like how did this strength come, I think it's from resources my family did not get. And I'm just like, I don't ever want people to experience anything that I've been through, especially
Yeah.
when it's resources and opportunities out here to help you.
So now you've taken your survival instincts and you've turned it into a business. And you have this phrase, get paid to read. What do you mean by that phrase? Get paid to read.
Yes, get paid to read, get paid to review. So, one thing about Memphis, we have a gazillion nonprofits. Because we have so many nonprofits, they're usually like grant funding, all these different things. Actually, my first opportunity working under a grant was at Shelby County Division of Corrections in college.
Mm.
And it was a grant funded program. And that was like 2012. We can do a lot of things, when you have funding, all these different things. So I really started paying attention to what type of jobs I was applying to and how creative things got. By the time 2019 got here, I think I had gotten tired of working in certain jobs that was grant funded. I'm like, I wanted to learn how to write grant. So I found a
Mhm.
class online, and while I took the class, it was one sentence. It says, if you would like to make some quick money, become a grant reviewer. And I actually was working on the class while at that time I was working inside of 201 Poplar. I was in my counselor's office. And so I started researching, like, what is a grant reviewer? I'm like, I
Right.
don't know what this is. In the back of my head, my grandma like, you never get too old to learn. So I actually was just researching away, and I was like, okay, let me figure out what is a CV. At this point, I have these 2 degrees. Nobody ever taught me how to write a CV. I thought it meant cover letter. I had no idea that it meant curriculum vitae. When I say research, went down a rabbit hole trying to figure it out. I submitted my CV. Center for Medicaid and Medicare were the first federal agency, because they fall under another one, federal agency that reached back out to me and said I had been
Mhm.
selected as a grant reviewer. And so I'm
Mm.
like, okay, whatever.
So let me ask you, why is it so important for the Black community to have, grant reviewers? I know I hear a lot of people, nonprofits saying, we're going to write this grant, we're going to write this grant.
Mhm.
But a lot of times they don't receive the grant. I've talked to you about, I mentioned some things to you, and you were saying there's such a need for Black grant reviewers. Tell the audience why you said that.
What I learned while during this time with me being a grant reviewer is that a lot of times people who sit on the grant reviewer panels, they don't look like me. They don't look like you. Sometimes they will automatically discriminate against organizations, communities, cities, and states if it is going to fund, I'll say, a underserved, under-resourced, underrepresented community.
Mm-hmm.
Even though when you apply for grants, you say that you're going to do these things. And I started noticing that people, they were just taking off points. And I'm like, nah, this is wrong. If this information is in the grant, then this is what you write. This is how you justify. And so when I started realizing that a lot of organizations, a lot of different places, especially if they were Black and brown communities, for example, they weren't getting
Mm-hmm.
funding just because the funding was going to be for Black and brown communities, or the agency applying or organization applying was a Black organization. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, let me teach people how to become a grant reviewer. And I was like, because this is an issue. I'm like, we need more people sitting in this seat catching these errors, because people are taking off for something as little as the comma in the wrong spot. They'll take out 2 points for a section just for a comma. The instructions in the notice of funding opportunity does not say take off for punctuation.
Right.
So I started noticing, and I started telling people, like, hey, you can read one grant application at that time, depending on your agency, you gonna get paid like $100 for that one, or you can get paid $350 just for reading and reviewing. Like now you
Mm-hmm.
have some, you can get paid $500 just from reviewing the grant application, and it's one application. I'm like, you know how to read, you know how to justify. If that information is there, then that's what you're going to justify it with.
Okay, now you also mentioned about the lack of Black people who are reviewers, and you said something like was only 7% of Black people are grant reviewers.
It's under 10%. So when I looked at the exact total, it was like 7-8% of Black people who are in the grant space as a whole. So that's from your grant reviewers, your grant writers, your technical assistants, less than 10%.
Okay, let's go on to
That's
another
it.
topic real quickly. And so you talked about estate planning. Why is this so important, especially in the Black community?
I actually teach a class, and I haven't taught it in a while, and I did not another fish fry, because here's why. We don't have our affairs in order. So when my
Mm-hmm.
granddad, right before my granddad passed away, he passed away during COVID. He didn't pass away from COVID, but he passed away during that time. Well,
Mm-hmm.
remember, we could not go into the hospitals. Think about, anybody would want to be with their loved ones during the hospital. The hospital did not want to let me in, and I was the one who found him in the house. I have power of attorney paperwork. I have advanced healthcare directives. I have everything. Like this hospital, because I won't say the name, I'm like, this
Mm-hmm.
hospital is not going to make decisions for my granddad. And
Right.
they were about to arrest me, and I was like, and when I get out, I'm coming back in here and I'm going to make these decisions for my granddad. So I had all of the paperwork, and that's how I was able
Mm-hmm.
to make those decisions. And the hospital
Mm-hmm.
could not mess up, because I did tell them it was going to be called Shaniqua's. People don't realize funerals are expensive.
Why is now a good time, in this season of gathering with families and friends and things of that nature? Why is now a good time to talk about wills and estate planning, things of that nature?
So if we want to even just talk about the crime rate, number one, we don't know how anyone's going to pass away. If you're getting life insurance early, you need to
Hmm.
get that early. People don't realize like your son, your daughter, whoever may get incarcerated and they may have a felony when they come out. It's hard to get them approved for life insurance. Folks don't realize that you don't want the hospital being the one being in charge of making decisions for your daughter, your son, your mom, because the
Right.
hospitals will make decisions. But if we have those conversations with each other now, they can make decisions for me with my granddad, and I wasn't playing, but I had paperwork to back me up. So I teach people about those things, even all the way with the Social Security Administration, like with your money, because you may be married and your spouse needs to get a certain amount. If you're not checking your Social Security, they're going to get a limited amount. So that's
Hmm.
why estate planning is like so crucial. I'm like, not another
Right.
fish fry. I cannot keep giving money to fish fries, chicken fries, any fries. Like,
That is so
we
true.
got to get it
And
together.
so Shaniqua, I could go on and on and on and talking with you and listening to your stories and keep doing what you're doing because we need more Shaniquas out there in the world. So usually we do a civics lesson here, but it's time, the Christmas season. I want to talk about or mention about gifts under the tree, what we want for our community, not just a gift, but what we want for our community. One thing that I want for our community is for us to stop doubting ourselves, but look into ourselves and appreciating the gifts that we do have, appreciating our talents, our creatives, our environments. We have so many wonderful amenities in Memphis. We're our worst critic. When I hear people coming from other places, whether it's another city, another state of the country, they always talk about how they love Memphis. We need to love Memphis. Memphians need to appreciate what we have. And that is my gift. Is for us to believe in ourselves, also spew hope among our children, our communities, our loved ones, but also to support and help each other.
I think my gift for our community would definitely be to keep striving and trust ourselves. We struggle with sometimes we don't get selected for opportunities or jobs or even just jobs, positions, and people they give up. But I think knowing that it's a such thing as it being your season, it is truly your season. We're going through tests, and how I said at the beginning of like the interview, while we were talking, I was like, it's either a pass or fail test. If you are a prayer or believer or whomever you talk to, knowing that if we still want to have a city that is thriving, because we're not going to have good days every day, we have to realize we're going to either pass or we're going to fail, and understand that every no is not the end of the world. Because I've had a lot of no's, and I'm just like, you know what? It's nobody else in the city teaching people how to become grant reviewers. I'm okay with all of those no's that I got in the past, because you know what? Those no's encouraged me to be better. So we as a community, we have to accept, hey, some of those no's, but some of those no's can be the best thing that has happened to us, but we have to keep going. At the end of the day, we can leave, we can talk about our city, but for somebody that has been to 14 countries, you can say what you want about Memphis, Tennessee, while I'm in Memphis, Tennessee. But if I'm out the country and you say something about Memphis, Tennessee, I'm the first one to defend Memphis, Tennessee.
If somebody wants to find out more about your program, how can they contact you?
My website is actually Watson Wright, so it's WATSON, and Wright is WRITES LLC.org. And then my email is watsonwrightsllc@gmail.com, or my name, Shaniqua@gmail.com. And I'm also on all of the social medias at Shaniqua Watson. It's only 3 Shaniquas in the world. I'm the only Shaniqua Watson spelled like this, so it's real easy to find me.
Okay. Right. And thank you for joining us. And people of the listening audience, thank you. Remember that your legacy matters. And whether it's writing that will or just sharing love, I'm Erika Sugarman, Unfiltered. Merry Christmas and happy holidays. And remember, your voice matters. Merry Christmas